In this video, I'll briefly introduce federal laws related to special education. Special education has been the most litigated area in school law. At the federal level, there are 3 federal disability laws. They are the Individuals with Education Act, which is called IDEA, Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, and the Americans with Disability Act. Because IDEA is a funding law, states follow many requirements of this statute only if states receive a federal IDEA funding, which all states currently do. But the federal government would provide only 40% of the funding for the IDEA programs. The rest of the 60% of the cost would be covered by the states. Since states take money from the federal IDEA funding, they are required to comply with the IDEA. During the 2020 presidential campaigns, I tracked 29 Democratic presidential candidates' education policy. In the graph you see on the screen, the Democratic presidential candidates were on the left, and their proposed education policies were on the right. Many Democratic candidates proposed to fully fund the IDEA. Bernie Sanders called for not only fully funding the IDEA, but also an increase in the federal IDEA funding from 40% to at least 50%. Elizabeth Warren's plan called for federal government's original 40% funding promise by committing an additional $20 billion a year to IDEA grants. Warren also proposed to expand IDEA funding for 3 to 5 years old and for early intervention services for toddlers and infants. Those policy proposals were based on the fact that IDEA had never been fully funded since the enactment of IDEA in 1975. In 2017, the federal government appropriated $12.3 billion, which covered less than 15% of the cost of IDEA programs. How much does it cost to fully fund the IDEA in 2017? It needed about $32 billion to cover 40% of the cost of the IDEA. In April 2022, Biden's administration requested an additional $3.3 billion over 2021 for IDEA. The 2023 fiscal year budget request included a total of $16.3 billion to cover the costs of IDEA programs. IDEA has 6 key principles. The first principle is FAPE. FAPE stands for a free appropriate public education. Students ages 3 through 21 who qualify under IDEA are eligible to receive a FAPE. The second principle is eligibility and evaluation. To provide a FAPE, the first step is to identify all eligible students and conduct evaluations to determine whether they are in need of special education. The initial evaluation will also inform what type of educational program would benefit the students. The third principle is IEP, which stands for Individualized Education Program. IEP not only outlines goals for the students, but also describe the student's placement. For example, whether the child will be placed in general education classroom or not. The fourth principle is least restrictive environment, which means that eligible students must be educated alongside their peers without disabilities to the maximum extent appropriate. The fifth principle is that students with disabilities must be provided related services and supplemental aids as needed to provide a FAPE. The sixth principle of IDEA is parental rights and procedural safeguards. School districts are responsible for overseeing special education services, and parents of students with disabilities have a legal right to participate in the development of their child's education. This is a collaborative process between the parents and the school districts. After a student is considered eligible and evaluated for special education, parents and school personnel meet to develop IDEA. Parents and students can seek legal recourse if they believe IDEA have been violated. In the next video, I'll introduce legal issues related to the first principle of IDEA, FAPE.